this was inspired by something that a friend told me a couple of weeks ago. We were discussing kindness and being compassionate and grateful and leading with an open heart, as, a default setting. We talked before about the default settings being fear, pleasure, anxiousness, obsessive thinking, worrying. All those things are part of the mind's, biological default setting. That's discussed in the Mayo Clinic Guide to Stress-Free Living book by Dr. Amit Sood. So that part, we've already talked about. But how do you, overwrite or replace those default settings with, again, being kind, being compassionate, being loving, leading with an open heart, no matter what? Even when people do or say things or life events happen, that it would be easy to slide back into the default settings to have done the work so that your default settings are something completely different. Not ignoring the situations, but bring a peacefulness to it so that if action is called for, you can do so by taking intelligent action. How do you do that? And for me, that has taken work. So when I was a couple of weeks ago, someone talked to me about Mr. Rogers, and they talked about how kind he was, right? If anyone's seen Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, it's something that came on PBS when I was a kid, and it was just really amazing. Like he created an inclusive environment of everyone, and he really led with kindness. Last year when I was on a ski trip, we were taking a shuttle back from a day of skiing. And my friend and I we're talking about kindness. And he asked me, had I seen the movie Mr. Rogers? And I had. So the shuttle driver actually said, you need to check that out. Like there's a long interview. No, there's a long YouTube video of Mr. Rogers before Congress advocating that funding not be cut for the program. And it is a powerful, hearing that he's at. I mean, what he shares with Congress and as he advocates for the programming being funded, really great. I, recommend it to anyone who is wanting to be inspired by somebody caring so much about creating a sense of community and of inclusivity of everyone. Mr. Rogers is the model of that. So fast forward to the conversations just a few weeks ago when we talked about, people working to be a certain way. And what I've noticed is in the past, I've really been in awe or inspired by people that really work hard at their craft. I mean, you think about the Tiger Woods, you think about the very skilled surgeon, the musician. You just think about these people, the great speakers, how well they've done it. They work on it. They work on it like it's their job. And before you know it, they make it look effortless. And I've really been inspired by that. But as I've gone deeper into my practice, I am inspired by people that are kind and loving, no matter how life or other people show up. Like that's a big one for me now. And I have really worked on replacing my default setting of complaining with kindness. I set out many years ago to make being kind, being engaged, like breathing for me. Like I want to be effortless like that, to be, and now I'm continuing to work on leading with an open heart. So someone said, hey, did you ever see the interview that Mr. Rogers' wife, Sarah did when the movie came out about Mr. Rogers being kind? And they asked Sarah, was he always that way? And she's like, no, he wasn't, all that way. He wasn't always that way. He was, because he was born that way. He was that way because he worked at it. He worked at being kind. He worked with not just having a faith, but he worked on the faith being expressed through his behavior and treatment of other people. And Mr. Rogers never talked about his religious faith or anything like that. He didn't have to. He lived it. He didn't have to tell people what church he went to or what he was studying or anything like that, unless you asked. But you knew that there was something that was informing the way that he showed up. And he worked at that being the case. And so I was really like inspired by that sharing of someone who that I came to look up to, as a child with television programming back in those days. But to hear his wife talk about who this person, who this human being was when the cameras weren't rolling, was really inspiring to me. So the question is, you know, are you practicing? When people look at you, can they tell what your practice is? That's the question. If you complain a lot, if you resist, you know, change, if you are a troublemaker like I was when I came into places like a grievance looking for a cause, even though I worked hard, I still brought that kind of negative energy to the space. You know, that's what I was practicing like all the time. So I was really good at it. So what are you practicing? Are you quick to judge? Are you quick to say, no, I don't like this? Or are you practicing acceptance of being a contribution to the space? Are you helping create an environment of community and inclusivity? What are you doing? What is your practice? And is it aligned with whatever your values are? And are your values, are they, do they contribute to the healthy goodness of the universe? That's the question. And so I'm deep in my practice right now, inspired by Mr. Rogers and the light. And this is awesome. Keep practicing.